wonderful educators. I am so excited and so thrilled for this video. I got the opportunity to speak to the one and only former Teacher of the Year, Casey Bethel. He's going to inspire you. He's going to encourage you. He's going to drop all of these nuggets of wisdom for you. And I'm so excited to share this with you today. So without further ado, my interview with Casey Bethel. Well, oh my goodness. I am super excited. This is JL Waters here, your Oasis mentor, and I am so proud and so pleased to have a wonderful guest with me today. He has so graciously blessed me with his presence. And I'm just excited to have this opportunity to talk with him today. The one, the only, former Teacher of the Year, principal, father, husband, all the things, Casey Bethel. Woo!
Well, thank you so very much for letting me speak with you today. It is my honor to be involved. And before we even start this conversation, let me say thank you for what you're doing, for pouring out into other people, for your channel, for the content, for being yourself, for just having a heart to inspire and motivate those who are sometimes tired, those who are sometimes weary, who need a place, who need an oasis to come to refresh their souls.
I love that. I love that. So, for those that don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am Casey Bethel. I am a 20-year educator. I have worked in high schools most of my time. I started off teaching high school science, did that, and spent some time as the Georgia Teacher of the Year, worked at the county office, got into administration. Now I'm the proud principal of New Manchester High School, a suburban high school outside of Atlanta. It's about 1,900 students, and my work is still in inspiring young people to be their best.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that is such a huge responsibility. I'm excited to just hear about how did it come about you even going into education? Like, did you always know you wanted to be a teacher? How did that come about?
No, so teaching is a second career for me. I spent some time as a scientist. When I was in high school,
Oh.
science and math were easy for me. I grew up at a time when, I said I grew up at a time, 80s and 90s, where
That's back in the day for some people.
for
They
some
say
people,
my
right?
students say that's the olden days, Casey.
Right? And I don't know if it's every school, but the school I went to, kids who did well in school were always pushed to be a doctor or a lawyer. You can be a doctor, or you can be a lawyer. You can be a doctor, or you can be a lawyer.
Mm,
And that was great for it served the purpose that it needed to serve at the time, but it had everybody thinking that those were the valued professions and those were the ways to be successful. So because science was easy for me, I wanted to be a doctor or a scientist, and I did those things. I got those degrees. All my degrees are in science, but it
oh,
wasn't fulfilling. I remember after I completed my master's degree in genetics, I was working in a science lab. I didn't feel a sense of purpose. So I
mm,
started to ask myself, where do I feel a sense of purpose? And it was always when I was doing something with young people. So I
mhm.
took a break from that, what I thought was going to be a break for a year or two while I sort out what my life should be about. I said, I'll teach for a year or two. I like working with young people, not knowing that that 1 or 2 years is now turned into
Mhm.
20. That's my
Wow.
purpose. That's the thing that gives me joy. And I wake up every morning feeling like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's how education started for me.
Wow, I love that. Isn't it something about when you're walking in your purpose, it just brings a whole fulfillment in life, and life is just sweeter. It's just different.
I agree. I cannot agree more. Even in the difficult times, you feel a sense of connection to it and a sense of persistence that comes from knowing I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly. So, I got to get into the Georgia Teacher of the Year, something that I am aspiring to.
Well,
But
you've got the gift for it.
But listen, I know it's a whole thing. Like I've been teacher of the year on a school level before, and I think a lot of teachers they don't realize the amount of work and what actually is entailed. It's not just, hey, I'm teacher of the year and then this whole glamorous thing. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it as well. So tell me what was that process of you becoming Georgia Teacher of the Year? And then what all did it entail once you were, named? Now, this is Teacher of the Year for the entire state of Georgia, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
I
okay.
said I said during that year that it was my pride, my joy, and my responsibility to represent the other 115,000 public educators in Georgia. So I was really proud of that.
Wow.
A lot of people have no idea how you become the state teacher of the year. Well, like you said, every school has their own local teacher of the year. And I had been named the local teacher of the year for the school I taught at,
Okay.
um, which then put me in a competition against the other 35 schools in my district. I was
Hmm.
just satisfied or proud, surprised to be the teacher of the year for my school. Oh,
Yeah.
I never felt like I was the best teacher at the school. There are lots of great teachers doing great work.
Yeah.
But what happened after that was this competition entailed writing essays. I had to spend the summer writing 10 essays about different education topics. If I could
Wow.
change one thing in education, what would I change? If I had the platform to speak to other educators, what would I say? Um, what should be the role of the government in education? Essays like that, right? That involved
Wow.
my own thoughts, but research and learning. And I got a lot from that. After that, my classroom was visited by the local community to come and witness my teaching. There was an interview process,
Wow.
and I was proud again to be named the district teacher of the year. Surprised again. It's like, oh my God, I don't know that I deserve this, but here I am. And then that put me in a competition with the 159 district teachers of the year in Georgia. A
Wow.
new set of essays of even deeper topics of
Wow.
education policy topics, and my classroom being observed again, and another interview panel with the state school superintendent and some other stuff like that, and meeting some really amazing people. And then they
Yeah.
showed up in my classroom one day and told me that I had been chosen the state teacher of the year. A
Wow.
huge
That's
honor of mine.
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. And so from there, like it's kind of like, how like Miss America, you kind of have that year to reign and you have all these different little appearances, but I'm sure you weren't necessarily cutting ribbons at the local. I mean, you could have been. What did that year look like for you?
The learning curve is steep during that year. At each level, it accelerates so much more. The
Hmm.
amount of learning, the amount of exposure, you get to learn how education decisions get made. And it's a big responsibility, not just to represent, but to try to be the voice for other educators. So I
Yeah.
got to visit almost all 159 counties in Georgia, to
Wow.
go and view their teachers or give addresses, give speeches, write essays, things that help them. But I also got to work directly with the Georgia Department of Education,
Mm.
learning about education policy. I sat on a few different boards, the Georgia
Okay.
Partnership for Excellence in Education, um, the Atlanta Regional Commission, various different boards. And when they have questions about education, they turn
Yeah.
and look at you. And wow, now I have to speak for 115,000 people. What do I think is the best idea for how to improve education for families, for students, for
Hmm.
communities? And so it's lots of learning, lots of hard work, lots of reading, but it's was incredibly transformational for me and very rewarding.
Wow. And so with you going to all of those counties, when did you do that? Because were you still teaching for that year?
So no, you have the 1 year off, and that becomes your
Ah,
job. That becomes your
wow.
job. It sounds great to have this year off from my classroom, but in the same day, I had to be in Macon in the morning and in Valdosta in the afternoon, or I had to be in Atlanta
Wow.
in the morning and then Savannah in the afternoon, or various different places around the state,
Wow.
for this meeting or the other meeting or this training or this other board meeting. And so you have this year off with all this travel built in, but learning about our state, learning about
Mm.
different schools. The challenges in urban schools are not the same as the challenges in rural schools sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the challenges are the same, sometimes they're
Yeah.
different. Um, Recruitment of teachers, encouraging more people to be teachers, working
Hmm.
with groups like the Georgia Association for Education or PAGE or other groups like that. And it's a great year that has
Wow.
changed me as a person.
That's beautiful. I had no idea. I had no idea it entailed all of that because I was thinking like, how did you teach and do all of that? Wow. That's incredible.
Yes.
So as a principal, as an administrator, there could be some educators listening right now who are wondering, like, what are some things that administrators look for? So what are some things that you look for when you're trying to bring someone on, when you're looking at hiring someone for New Manchester High School, when you're looking for teachers and you're in that interview process, what do you look for when you're in the process of hiring a new teacher?
So I want someone who has a heart for young people. I want
Mm,
to work with an entire faculty and staff group of people who have young people's best interests at heart. Prove to me and show me how you're invested in young people in the difficult times, because they'll, in this profession, like in every other profession, there'll be good times, there'll be bad times, there'll be
yes.
happy days, and there'll be trying days. What you fall back on in your trying days is, I am committed to the success of these young people. So I want to know that from you. What happens when things are difficult? How
Mm,
do you look at a child and see their potential even when they don't see it? And then what can you bring to the table in the area of content to make them smarter,
mhm.
but also
Yeah.
in the area of motivation and inspiration to get a young person to set high aspirations and to work harder.
Yes.
So that's what I look for.
Yeah, because it's different. Like so I'm in elementary, right? I have the little ones, and then middle school, you have the interesting emotional ones,
They
the hormones, and then high
don't
school,
know what they want to be in middle school.
yeah, they kind of they want to be grown,
Kids one
but
day
also
and
they still
adults
kind of want
one
to
day.
be a little babyish. But by high school, it's a whole different thing. So what would you say is like your biggest challenge as far as in the high school setting?
So you're right. In high school, we know we've got 4 years to get you ready for the rest of life.
Mm-hmm.
4 years to get you ready for this great big world. And getting young people and teenage years to think that way is
Yeah.
a big challenge, because for them as teenagers, they want to think in the immediate, and they also
Mm-hmm.
want to think in their own small sphere, right?
That's good. Yeah.
What affects just me, and then what affects me right now?
Yeah.
And so we need to train them that it's not just you, it's a big world. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just right now, there's a lot of future ahead of you. So, how do you broaden that horizon and see the
Mm-hmm.
relationship between what you're learning and being prepared to do those things, to exist in a big world
Yeah.
and to be ready for tomorrow?
That's
And
good.
that's important whether I'm teaching them math or I'm teaching them science, right?
Yeah. That's
So, that's a
good.
challenge, and that's the thing we work on.
Yeah, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges to your students today? It's a different generation. I know each generation thinks the generation before it is like in trouble, and back in my day we didn't do all of that kind of thing. What do you think is the biggest challenge for the students at your school?
Um, a, a, a big challenge is knowing what to do with information. If you'd have told me when I
Mm,
was in high school in the 80s that I would have the same amount of information as the library in my pocket, I would have said, That's impossible." You
yeah.
know, but every one of them has an entire library in their pocket.
Yeah, that's
But the
good.
question or the challenge for them and for us is to teach them, okay, now the access to info has been taken
Mhm.
care of. What you
Yeah.
do with that info is what separates those who are truly successful from
Yeah.
those who are not meeting their full potential. How do
Mhm.
we maximize the info you have available? So it's less important now to know where the answer is. It's more
Mhm.
important to know what to do with that answer.
Yeah, that's good. The responsibility of it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about, and we're gonna kind of pivot a little bit. Well, part of it can be as far as Georgia Teacher of the Year, because I think you said that was very challenging. But I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions along the lines of what it has been your biggest challenge professionally, and then what has been your biggest challenge personally?
Oh, wow.
Mm,
Um, Great questions. And it's great questions for everyone to think about. So I'm hoping that
mhm.
anybody who's watching this video are thinking about those questions. You're so perceptive, and I appreciate that from you.
Thank you.
One of my biggest challenges professionally is choosing what to prioritize at a given moment.
Mhm.
When we work in education, it was difficult for me just now to pick what I think the biggest challenge is for my students. Right? There's
Yeah.
probably a list of other things I could have chosen.
Yeah.
As a teacher in a classroom or as an administrator in a school building, there's multiple things that need to be done, multiple things that need to be fixed. And for
Uh,
each of us professionally, me included, one of the challenges is how do I prioritize this list of things so that I'm maximizing my output? How do I choose the
mhm.
right thing to focus on?
Yeah.
Um, so that's the answer there. And then personally, just finding work-life balance, which is why a channel like Oasis is so important.
Yeah.
Finding the great balance. How do I recharge my own battery? How do I sharpen my own saw? How do I take care of me so that I can
Mhm.
then take care of others? Is a thing that I'm
Yeah.
working on personally.
That's good. So what does a typical day look like for you? Congratulations on your marriage. That
Thank
blessed
you.
my heart. That blessed
Thank
my
you.
heart. For those of you that don't know, we have a connection,
Yes.
and we can talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about your typical day, and then we'll talk about that connection that we have.
So I'm a father. Wake up in the morning, getting myself ready for work, getting my kids ready for school. Make sure
Mm-hmm.
that I tap in with them each day, knowing what they have on their slate, making sure that they're leaving the house prepared. And
Yeah.
then I make sure they get to school on time. And then I come into this building, into this office, turn this computer on, grab my walkie talkie, and it's one thing after another from 8 o'clock in the
Faithful
morning
walking.
until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Um, just helping and supporting. As an administrator, my job is to be the chief support.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think it's about being the man in charge. I'm the
Yeah.
one that has to ultimately answer, but I instead see it as being the chief support. I'm here to support all the teachers. I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
support all the students. I'm here to support
Yeah.
all the families.
It's
So
beautiful.
it's how can I support all day? What's
Yeah.
the need at a given moment and how do I address that need? What's the problem and how do I fix that problem? How do I have a team that fixes that problem? And it looks the problem's different from day to day or the
Mm-hmm.
need is different from day to day, but it's a whole day of filling the gap. And I love it because at the end of the day, I come back here at 4 o'clock, I take a deep breath and I say, I hope I did something that helped the teachers,
Yeah.
the students, the families be successful.
That's amazing. And I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did that. So we have a connection. So how I know Casey is from my wonderful sister. Plug to her. She has a YouTube channel as well. Her name is Dr. Tobias, and she is an amazing nurse practitioner. But before she was a nurse practitioner, she was a NICU nurse, and she was a nurse at the hospital, and she helped take care of your babies. Is that correct?
Absolutely love her. My family loves her. My kids love her. We still talk about her in our home almost every day. And those kids we're talking about are 12 years old. But we
Beautiful.
talk about supporting families. She was a support for me and my family when we needed it the most. Our kids were born at 24 weeks. They were a little more than 1 pound
Mhm.
when they were born. My daughter Harper, my son Jackson, um, and not knowing how to help them when they needed help, I had to rely on her,
Yeah.
and she did that for me. And so I love her to death. I love her to life, and I would do anything for her. So I'm very thankful to her.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's gonna be so happy to hear this. I can't wait till she sees it. And so tell me, as we're talking about Oasis and self-care for teachers, tell me what are some things that you do to take care of you?
I would encourage, so what I do for me, and I would encourage everybody is to do two things.
Mhm.
Work as hard as you can when it's time to work, but then unplug when it's time to unplug.
Mm.
And make sure that the other areas of your life are well taken care of. I know teachers all across the nation take papers home to grade, or you
Yeah.
take the stories home with you in your heart, or you take the challenges with you or the frustrations home with you, but also make sure that you unplug when it's time to unplug so that your family is taken care of and your responsibilities are taken care of. Because only when you are your best can you be the best for others. Do that. And then the second thing is to always be learning.
Mm.
Always be learning. What are you reading? Who are you listening to? Who are you watching? Join a channel like Oasis and listen to other educators
Yes.
because we have to continue to sharpen our own saw so that we can be better one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So, what advice, other than what you just gave, any other advice that you would give someone? I'm going to break it down into parts. So, what advice would you give to administrators? And what advice would you give to educators that are currently in the field? And then what advice would you give to newcomers, those who are the babies just coming into the field or they're considering education? It might be the same advice, but break it down. Give us some advice, some words of wisdom from Casey Bethel.
All right. For those who are administrators, my advice is to walk in humility,
Mm,
and really have a servant's heart. Um, don't get drunk on the leadership. Like I said, it
good.
sometimes feels good to be the man in charge, to have the master key, so to speak, or to have the walkie-talkie. It's a big thing in schools. Who has the walkie-talkie? But remember, our role is to be the biggest support. How can I
Mm,
support the teachers? How can I support the children? How can I support the families? Everybody's doing the best they know how.
yeah,
I don't think there's anybody who wakes up and leaves home every day thinking, how can I fail? Everybody wants to succeed.
yeah,
So you have to see the best in people and how do you encourage them to be better? But you do that with humility.
yeah.
You do that with humility and transparency. So that and build relationships. So that's my advice to administrators.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my advice to teachers, um, in addition to the things I just said about investing
Yeah,
in yourself, right?
yeah, yeah.
My other advice is to see every student in your class as a person and as an individual. You can
Mm,
never get away from that.
yeah,
Some parts of education force us to keep track of the numbers. What are their scores and what are their
yeah.
skills and what are their
Mhm.
deficits? But every child is a person and every child is an individual. Every student has an immense amount of potential. And it's
Yeah,
our duty to see that and know that and get to know them beyond what their name is and where they live.
yeah, that's
Um,
good.
and then for those who are looking to join this profession, um, I'd say to jump in. I'd
Yeah,
say to jump in as
mm,
soon as you can with both
yeah,
feet. You'll never feel like you're ready enough. You'll never feel like you know enough, but we
mhm,
need you. And everything that you need to learn and everything you need to know, you'll pick up along the way as long as you have, like I said in the beginning, the right heart for children.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
have the heart, if you have the why, the how
Mhm.
will solve itself.
I
So
love
come
that.
join us. It's the most rewarding profession I know. It's the easiest way to know that you're making a difference.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us, what's next for you?
Um, what's next for me is to finish this cup of coffee. But but I don't know. I'm so one day at a time that it's
Yeah.
hard for me to see way down the road. There's some people ask me, in 5 years, where do I see
Mhm.
myself? And
Yeah,
I'll turn that over to the higher power I trust.
I
But
love
at the
that.
same time, I'm okay with being in this same seat 5 years from now. I am okay with
Yeah,
that. The
yeah,
school I attended, the high school I attended, had the same principal for 20 years. And that's
yeah.
not really a thing anymore.
You're
And
right.
sometimes I think about what a blessing that had to have been to my school that the same person,
Mhm.
what that does for the culture and the consistency of a school,
Good.
um, as long as the person's good at it.
Yeah.
I hope I'm good enough at it to be in this seat for that long, and I'll be okay with that. But if there's something bigger for me to do, I'm
Mhm.
okay with that too. In the same way that I stepped into the role of being Georgia Teacher of the Year without knowing it, without
Yeah,
prepping for it, and
yes.
just became committed to doing my best at that time. If
Mhm.
there's something after this for me to do, I'll step into that role, but it'll always be a commitment on my part to do my best for the most
Yeah.
amount of people, and to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. It reminds me of like Joseph and like no matter what happened, no matter what role he stepped in, God just blessed him every step of the way and every step of the way prepared him for his next,
Yes.
for his next challenge or for his next role. But just that blessing being on him. And it wasn't about him. It was just God's favor was just on him. And I
Amen.
I, I see that on you. So that's
Amen.
that's awesome. So I'm so proud and so grateful that you took this time with me today and we could just talk about education and talk about you and life and teaching and all that good stuff. Do you have any parting words for our educators before we wrap it up?
I'll say this to every educator that the magic happens in classrooms.
Mm,
Um, Even as an administrator, I step into classrooms and teach whenever I get the opportunity. I taught this Saturday, and I
wow.
don't mean for a minute. I taught for 4 hours
Wow.
to 180 kids who came to Saturday school and wanted to get ready for a
Wow.
state exam, and
It's
they were
amazing.
surprised to see me in it. I said, "No, I'm here to help you guys learn." The magic happens in classrooms. I want everybody in the world to know that the magic happens in classrooms.
Mhm.
Um, and for that reason, teachers are special. Every
Yeah.
teacher is a superhero because they have the chance to change the life of the children who sit in front of them. And to never lose sight of that, to be encouraged, to be proud of what we do, to be celebrated, and to celebrate yourself when you don't feel like others celebrate you.
Yeah.
That's my parting word for everyone. And I want to thank you for the way that you're transparent, for the way that you're investing in other people, because it's making a huge difference. And the seeds you're sowing are going to bear a lot of fruit for a lot of kids. So thank you.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Casey. Thank you so much. And so, how can our audience connect with you if they want to connect with you on social media or in any way that we can support you?
Well, absolutely. I still put out content, so I'd love to connect and keep the conversation going.
Yes.
They can find me on Instagram. I'm still 2017 GATOTY, 2017 Georgia Teacher of the Year. On Facebook, I'm KCM Bethel.
Okay.
And on YouTube, I'm KCM Bethel. But find me on any one of those platforms and let's keep the conversation going. Let's encourage each other. I need it, you need it, we need it. So let's be there for one another.
I love it. And I'll make sure that I have all of his information on the description below. It was such a joy today, Casey. Listen, there's greatness in Casey, there's greatness in you. Go forth and be great. I'll see you next time in the Oasis. Bye, guys.